welcome to another episode of Series C Growthonomics. We're going to continue our conversation of 2022 readiness. Last time we talked about most important aspect of making sure you're aligning your data with business. This time I want to talk about analytics agenda. What is an analytics agenda? Analytics agenda, so before I talk about analytics agenda, as a head of product, head of marketing, as a head of business or head of data, you have lots of questions that you can ask of data. You go back to our example of food delivery organization from last episode. You know, as a food delivery, you'll have questions on a day-to-day basis about your revenue, your growth, week over week, location, your operations, how well is it going, what's the average delivery time and wait time, all of those questions. You can ask lots of questions of your data. However, you'll never have enough analytics resource to answer every question. And the second point to remember is not every question is of equal value. Answer to some questions would help you ask more questions. Answer to some questions would drive no value. It was a nice to have, no. Answer to some questions may drive growth upwards of 20-30% or 2x, 4x. So it's important to know what question to ask. And given that you are analysts are never cheap, you're paying you have such expensive resources, you want to use them most effectively. Now, again, depends on how you as an organization are looking at your data and your analytics resource. You can look at that as I ask a question, you build me a dashboard, or you answer that question like more tactically, which many of our head of data are often not able to take a stand and are often sort of like a tactical Jira manager, ticket manager, answering questions on an ad hoc tactical basis. That I believe is not necessarily the most useful way of engaging your analytics resource, your head of data, and data as an asset. You're not monetizing your data. I believe the better way to do that is really see them as a thought partner, see your analytics resource as somebody who can drive strategic value to you and identify opportunities worth millions of dollars in growth. How are you going to do that? That concept is called analytics agenda. What kind of questions to ask your data? And so for 2022 readiness, I would say the way we recommend you lay out your analytics agenda is a framework we use called 3 key questions. And I'll link to a white paper below for those who are interested. The gist of it is this. Going back to our, so first figure out your KPIs and then the driver metrics and then figure out the projects which line up with it. So for our food delivery organization, the two most, and for most of the startups, the 2 most important metrics which most organizations go with are growth. They all are looking to grow. And the other one is revenue or profits, right? However you look at it. These are your KPIs. These are the 2 sort of North Stars that you're driving towards. And then start figuring out what drives your metrics. So for example, growth is essentially, you can look at your customer growth, right? So your customer growth is a number of customers in this example, and your number of customers is a function of your retained customer from last week or last month, however you can call it. And for some of our startups with the app world, I'm talking about DAU, MAU, ratios. Those are the metrics that you're looking at. But basically, essentially, number of customers, retained customers, and acquisition. And then what is an acquisition a function of? It's some advertising campaign, and so on and so forth. Figure out your top metrics, top KPIs. Most of the startups have these top metrics. Again, if they're not operational heavy will have other metrics. And then figure out the driver metrics, and then figure out, hey, 1% increase in our acquisition is equal to how much growth and how much revenue. And that is how you will start figuring out what is the relative importance of each of these aspects, each of these driver metrics to your end goal. And if 1% acquisition is equal to, let's say, X revenue, let's say, 10 million in revenue. And if you increase retention by 1%, it is equal to $2 million. You start understanding the relative scale of these buckets that you have to look at. Now, if you line up projects which says, I'm looking looking at potentially increasing our acquisition rate or improving the efficacy of our acquisition, and that should drive 1% incremental. That's worth 10 million. That will be greater than any project that you would go for potentially retention, where you're targeting 1% worth 2 million, and so on. So this is of course simplifying a lot, but this starts giving you an idea. Figure out your KPI, figure out your drivers of the KPI, figure out your projects lined up with it, estimate the value of that, and then make sure that then basically you have your list of 50 projects, figure out the top 10 of those, and that's your analytics agenda. I hope you found this useful. Next time, I'm going to talk about what you should do with your analysts so that they have a seat at the table.